We are activating your unique self-discovery one show at a time. The Orchard of Wisdom Self-Discovery podcast are at your fingertips, just waiting to inspire and invite you in discovering just how awesome you really are and how to navigate through life in joy, enrichment, personal abundance, in mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul. All the people we bring you are here to serve you on your journey of life. Do enjoy our next show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another edition of Our Gifted Children right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Norma Jean Maxwell. We're going to be talking about our gifted children today and how to help our child flourish. Also, how to help those differently abled children. She says every child can learn, and if they aren't, we need to look at the teacher to find out why. The system itself is broken. How do we fix it? After working in public school system for over 2 decades, she watched the slow decline and clawing back of resources for the kids that don't learn well in the classroom setting. She watched as the schools fade out and move away from teaching basic foundation literacy and math skills into a more politicalized agenda, and watch more and more of the bright children fall through the cracks, getting to high school and still unable to read or do math. It's heartbreaking to see a child who could be successful fail to fulfill their potential because they're not being taught in a way that makes sense to them. After many years of successfully supporting and teaching their kids and being unable to find a program that incorporates the components needed for early literacy, she decided to create her own based on own training and many years of success with children. Every child can learn, and if they aren't, we need to look at why. And that why is very, very important. Now, she is a mum of 2 grown young men. Both had learning challenges and struggled with current school system. They were the square pegs that didn't quite fit into the round holes. She also has a brother who has dyslexia. She saw how negative school experience left lasting scars. Additions being the tough guy to compensate for feeling stupid. She worked in the Surrey public school system for 8 years and special ed until she retired a couple of years ago, mostly out of frustration over the current system failures. She's also trained in Auckland, Gillingham therapeutic tutor, which means that she's a reading and spelling specialist and a behavior interventionist with extension experience in working with kids in the program. And so having seen kids struggle, she knows that we need to do something about it. Now, I have dyslexia, not full kind of spectrum, but especially certain things were extremely hard for me to digest because they didn't make sense to my mind. I was also a very sickly child, so missed school a lot. And if you didn't catch up, you were simply left behind. And we should be, in today's world, with all the technology and all the abilities, be teaching our children should be flourishing. They've got all this knowledge at their fingertips, but they seem to be failing. And that is on us, isn't it? It's not the child, it's on us and the system. Welcome to the show, Norma.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's a difficult one around the education because we know how education is the liberation of children. It gives them so many opportunities. But when they are being left behind because they are struggling to learn in a certain format, we're not only dishonoring them, but we're depriving ourselves of probably quite some incredible innovators and creators just because we wanted them to fit in that square peg. And it's wrong. And the system is wrong. But how do we change it?
Well, that is a good question. And I feel as when I first started in the public school system, which was actually like 20 years ago, and I was there for 18 years, at that time, as an education assistant, someone who was helping support those kids that don't learn in a
Traditional setting. We have a whoopsie here, folks. Bear with us. Sorry, folks, we had an internet whoopsie there. She is back with us and busy telling us of her experience in the school system, which she did for 20 years, or 18 years, and why she actually redirected. So please continue, love.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. I have no idea what happened
It's
there.
internet.
Oh, yeah, what I was saying was that when I first started 20 years ago, in my position as a education assistant and supporting kids with special needs or learning challenges, um, I was more often than not in one classroom all day long, and I might have been assigned to one or two kids, but I actually was there to help a lot of kids. So those
Mm,
kids that needed the extra support got it through me. And what I watched happen over those 2 decades was that just kept getting clawed back more and more and more. We started getting heavier caseloads. I would be running from classroom to classroom. And of course, I have this schedule that says at this time I'm in this classroom and then I'm over there at this time, which, I might show up and they're in gym. Well, I can't help anybody when they're in gym, right? So,
right.
it wasn't efficient and it
Mm,
really wasn't effective. And um, also, because there's such shortages, oftentimes I would get pulled from my students to go work with kids that needed, more support, and their EAs or their support workers weren't there. So my kids would just be, thrown to the wayside. So it's a really, really ineffective system that's
mm.
not working anymore for most kids. And it's not working for the teachers either,
No.
right? It's not just the kids that are suffering with this, is that the teachers are also losing the support that they need, because honestly, in a classroom, you have 25 to 30 kids. There's only one of you, and there's
Yeah.
only so much you can do, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
um,
it's the system really has let the teachers down, and this is why we have so much burnout. But it's also letting the kids down, which means we're letting society down. Because if those children don't feel worthy, if they don't feel attended to, if they don't feel they have a voice, or they feel left behind or dumb. I was brought up to believe I was stupid,
mhm,
which I kind of played to my thing. Okay, nobody expects anything from me, so that's okay. So,
bingo,
right. Um,
bingo.
but there's still a kind of like, well, why am I stupid? Because I can't learn the same way as everybody else. And it took me learning from life rather than education of what my capabilities were and what they weren't. And back in that day, I so wish that somebody could see I couldn't learn that way. I learned better this way. Why was that so difficult? And yet, all these years later, I'm 68, so we're looking at 60 something years later, and this problem has only got worse, where it should be getting better. And it's across the board, isn't any particular area, it's across the board in the school system, much like our medical system is kind of being run by the accountants and not at the well-beingness of the patient who are our children.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, it's people that are way up here who've never stepped foot in a classroom that are
Hmm.
making the decision for our children, and they actually have no idea what's
Right.
going on in classrooms. And, to speak to what you were just saying, it's like I've worked a lot of years in primary classrooms. I love working with the little kids, and I can tell you that even at 5 years old, by October, they're already figuring out that they don't know what that kid
Yeah.
knows. And
Yeah.
it really does affect their self-confidence
Hmm.
and their self-esteem, their self-worth, and their willingness to even try.
Yeah.
And those are the kids that they go into grade one now, and they've missed a whole bunch of what happened in kindergarten. So that foundation, and every year you're building on what
Yes.
you have supposedly learned the years before. So all that happens is that gap in their learning just keeps growing wider and wider, right? And they say that, from kindergarten to grade three is when they learn to read. And
Mm.
then from grade four onwards, they read to learn.
Mm.
But what happens when they get to grade four and they're expected, to be able to do research projects and look up things online and read their worksheets and their textbooks, but they can't read.
I know. I
Yeah.
know.
So, we have so many children that are going into high school now that still can't read.
I know. We see this kind of with stars. There was Fantasia from America's Got Talent, and to find out that she couldn't read, exquisite singer and things like this. And it's like, but how? How in this day and age, that our children don't know how to read? And it's, oh, well, one or two gets fallen through the cracks. No, you've got a Grand Canyon here of
Yeah.
children falling through. And it is, stop putting it on the teachers. There's only so much they can do. There has to be more money inserted into education. And that goes across the board. That includes music and gym and, gardening and everything. It's not just about the books or about just sitting still for 8 hours, because not
Mm.
everybody's capable of doing that. And it's why can't we meet the kids where they're at?
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially in those primary years, kids learn through play. But
Mm,
a lot of teachers, especially when they're little like that, are kind of afraid of teaching in a really playful way because they're worried about their classroom management, right? Because,
mm.
little 5 and 6-year-old
Little
kids, boys
chaos.
particularly, yeah, they got a lot of energy. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when you cast them out, you got to reel them back in.
Right.
And a lot of teachers are afraid of that process of getting them back
Mm,
calm. But I support and work with kids in and outside of the school system that are young and have lots of energy, and I never have a problem reeling them back in, right? So it's all about setting up those expectations around
mm.
we're having fun, but when we're done, we have to,
Yeah.
right? And
Making
so
it a part of the process. Letting the kid
absolutely.
know what to expect. Oh, I can have all this fun. But when the teacher says or mom says, and then okay, that's the next part of the process. It's not something you're taking away their joy. It's part of that process of having the joy.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it's starting at a really young age, teaching them that they have that control over themselves. They
Yeah.
can self-regulate. They do have the power to make good choices. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that a lot of times, and that's part of what, when I say all kids can learn, I mean, they can learn everything. We don't
Mm-hmm.
give kids enough credit for what
No.
they're capable of, not just academically, but just in general, right?
Yes.
Like kids are our little superheroes, but we need to show them that they're our little superheroes because lots of kids don't believe they are yet, right?
And if you've got parents that have, were caught up in the old system and, like, through COVID and the lockdown, we found, so many parents are suddenly having to be teacher and it was way out of their element.
Mm.
Right. And kids were suddenly just it's on the computer. And for so many kids, that was no, I need the physical interaction. And, there was a lot revealed during that time, which you would have hoped that they would then kind of bring back into the school system and saying, look, this works here, or that works with this demographic, this doesn't work here, and really look at adjusting. And, again, I couldn't have homeschooled my kids. They were smarter than me academically. So there was no way I could help them. I could teach them other things, but not that. And kids need to be in that classroom environment where they are being supported by each other, right? Which
Mm.
is really, really important. So uh, I don't know when the system started breaking down. Maybe it was always, it hasn't evolved with technology. All right, you start getting computers in. Now you've got some schools that are only doing things through computers, and people are losing the art of simple writing. They don't know how to physically write because everything is done on the computer. And it's the merging of the both, or merging of everything. And unless you have more teachers, more money in the system, more paying attention to the groups that need it, we're going to just constantly keep leaving our children behind.
Yeah, I think the problem runs a little bit deeper than that as well. I think it was up to about 1960, they actually, when they were teaching language, they used a phonics
Hmm.
approach, right? So the English language is an alphabet system. So, unlike Chinese, say, where a symbol represents a whole thought,
Right.
here a symbol represents one or more sounds. And we have to put the sounds together to make a word, and we have to put the words together to make a sentence, and we put sentences together to make a paragraph. That's how we create meaning, right?
Hmm.
But for so many kids who can't read or can't write or
Hmm.
spell or whatever, it's because of the way they're getting taught in school. So the schools have taken on a very non-scientific approach, and it's called whole word learning, where kids are taught to memorize the shape of a word. So it's like, just look at it and we know that that word says cat based on how it's shaped. Now that works really great for some kids, not a lot, but some. But if your learning strength isn't visual,
Yeah. Yeah.
then that's not going to work for you. If you
Yeah.
don't have strong memory abilities, I mean, how many words can you, I always say, I can teach a kid to recognize 10 words and they'll know 10 words. Or I can teach them 10 sounds, 10 letters, and they'll have 1,000 words.
Exactly. Mm,
Right. So
mm,
it is really in how we approach teaching, and teachers are not being taught how to teach phonics. They come out
mm,
of university, they're actually not taught in university how to teach a child to read or spell.
mm,
They have no idea. So they get a position and then they start trying to piece together programs, or they go to their peers and say, what do you use?
mm-hmm.
And so they're using these programs that are only effective for a really small percentage of kids. And for the rest of them, it's just not working. Right.
Yeah.
So that is why I started with my creating my own program, because I
Mm,
have 17 years experience working supporting kids in learning to read, and I know what works, and
mm,
yet it's not happening in schools. And I did do a lot of professional development. I would run workshops for the teachers over the course of 4 weeks, or do 1 day pro Ds, and they would love it
mm-hmm.
and go, oh my gosh, and we see the results you're getting, so we know it works. But there's this reluctance to go against what they're being told to teach,
Yeah.
and to learn something new themselves, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
no, I have to learn something. I have to feel confident in it. I have to be able to deliver it. And it's like, well, yeah, you should. I
Well,
wish you would.
I think a great teacher is when you're willing to learn from your students. Because
Well,
because your students will phrase something or do something that you've not ever seen before, or you haven't thought of it that way. And if you could be just as inquisitive, from a different perspective as the child, then I think it keeps you engaged.
well, not only that, but the number one way to learn something is to teach it.
Hmm. Yes.
So, and that's what I tell them. It's like, don't worry if you don't know it. Teach
Hmm.
it, you'll learn it.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Just
the
by
kids
teaching.
will show you, I think this also, I had very much, I'm the teacher here. And,
Right.
my kids went through that as well because they ended up the, ADD and OCD and all of that type of thing. And it's I'm the teacher. What I say goes. And the teacher and the kids felt, but that's wrong because you're not hearing me. I haven't got a voice. You're punishing me for something I didn't do, or you're not allowing me to have any input. And if you've got that kind of teacher, it's all kind of insecurity and ego based rather than it is that I'm here to really nurture the children.
That's right. And those are the same teachers that are saying, sit down,
Hmm.
watch and listen, then go do.
Yes.
And the kids sit down and they watch and listen, but they're like,
What do
and
I
then when it's
do?
yeah,
Yeah.
and then when it's time to go do, they're looking at their peers going, okay, everybody's getting out their whatever
Yeah.
duotang. Oh, okay. And those are the kids that we're talking about here, right? The ones that are not able to learn from sit, watch, and listen. And maybe it's because they don't learn well visually or auditorily. Maybe it's because they're distractible, right?
Hmm.
So there's the noise going on outside, or they're thinking about what's in their lunch kit and all that sort of jazz. And so one of the first things I do when I'm working with children is I teach them about how their brain works, right?
Mm.
And so we have these different ways to learn, through our eyes, through our ears, through the muscles in our mouth, in our hands, from movement. And when we use all of our whole brain, here's my brain. When we use all of it, right? This is the visual, this is the auditory. Well, if all we're using is our eyes and our ears, well, we're not using all this.
Right.
That would be silly. And if all we used was this, well, we wouldn't be using these other really
Yeah.
important parts. So we want to use all of it together simultaneously. And then once they understand how their body parts connect to their brain, then I can also talk about roadblocks, which are the things that get in the way of their learning, right? And
Hmm.
that could be, you didn't have time for breakfast. You
Right.
didn't have a good sleep. You had a fight with your brother, all those things. You're thinking about where you're going to play at recess. And so when they can identify what their roadblocks are, then they have the power over those roadblocks,
Right.
right? And so what you're doing is not only teaching them about how their brain works and how they can optimize their learning, you're also handing the responsibility over to them.
Yes.
I can't control your behavior. Only you can. I can help
Hmm.
you,
Yeah.
but ultimately the choice is yours. So is that a roadblock? Are you getting in the way of your learning?
Mm.
And anyways, it's a beautiful thing to watch kids take ownership like that. because it just
It's that critical thinking that you're teaching them, to assess and
Mhm.
to be aware. We don't teach that to our kids of, assess how you're feeling right now. Okay, maybe it's feeling justified, but are you aware of what it's doing to you or how it's blocking what you're meant to be learning? And what are you going to do about it? What do you need to do to not feel like that so that you can be more open to receiving the knowledge that is in front of you? And by doing
Mhm.
that, we're doing our kids a favor of teaching them lifelong skills of how to manage themselves in life and how not to
Yes,
get daunted by things. Every single one of us, it doesn't matter what age we are, there's going to be something new we have to learn. We've got
always.
uh, different, people suddenly learning how to use computers or they get a new phone. How the hell does this work? Just hand it
Mhm.
over to a kid and it's
Yeah,
right? Can you show
yeah,
me? And it's if we're not willing to constantly learn, we're also not living in wonderment. And I think one of the beautiful things about a child is their curiosity, their wonderment about life. And I think that's essential and important to keep that wonderment alive in them.
absolutely. And I think that unfortunately, the way the public school system is structured, it does squash that
Yeah,
very at a very young age, right?
yeah.
Um, I
It's
think also
conformism.
conformism,
Mm,
absolutely. Do as I say, sit down, watch and listen. Um, if I can I share like a quick anecdotal story of a little
please.
boy?
Hmm.
Okay, so he was in grade 3 and he was really struggling in math. And they were learning skip counting, 2, 4, 6, 8.
Hmm.
And the teacher, she'd been, trying to teach him, but using the same method over and over and over and
Yeah.
wondering why it still wasn't working, right?
Mm,
And so she said, NJ, can you come and work with Tyler and just see if you can figure something out. So I knew this little boy, he was full of energy. Sitting and watching and listening was like torture for him.
yeah.
So I took him out in the hallway. I put some sticky notes on the floor. They said 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, up to 30. And I said, okay, this is what we're going to do, Tyler. We're going to look at the sticky note. We're going to say the number, and then we're going to hop to the next one. We're going to look at it. We're going to say
Mm,
it. So now he's up, he's moving, he's hopping, and he's going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10,
yeah.
12, 30. And I'm like, okay, after about 5, 6 times, I'm like, you know what? That's too easy. I'm going to try and trick you. Okay, close your eyes. And I took one random sticky note away and I put a blank one there. And I said, okay, you still got to tell me that number when you land on it. And he was like, oh, now I'm challenging him,
Yeah.
right? Now I turned it into up to the game. And
Yes.
so no problem. I'm like, well, that's still too easy. I got to take another one away. And I got to take another one away. And pretty soon all he had was blank sticky notes and he was counting by twos to 30. And
Right.
he was having so much fun. I think we took 20, 25 minutes tops and he
Hmm.
had it nailed. And he understood the pattern of 2, 4, 6, 8, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 0, right? He got that.
Mm.
And the teacher was like, what is going on out in the hallway? She said, come out and check it out. He's having so much fun. All I can hear is, this is so fun. And so then we did fives and then we did tens and then we went back and we did threes and fours. And then I taught him about how his brain works and why he was struggling in the classroom
Hmm.
and what could he do to help himself. And we talked about roadblocks, all those things. And do you know what? I never had to ask that boy twice to do some of the silly things I ask kids to do
Right.
because he understood that he was creating these pathways and
Hmm.
that we were optimizing his learning by using his strengths and working on strengthening his weaknesses as well, right? So now, was that a hard thing? Did I do a lot of prep?
Hmm.
I mean, I just like threw some sticky notes on the floor. Now that same teacher, she uses sticky notes all the time now
Hmm.
because she saw how successful it was. But there's so many teachers out there that would say, oh, I can't do that. I can't have the kids doing that. And I say, why not?
Right. Kids learn through
Why not?
play. They learn
Yes,
through play. When it's something that is enjoyable, they're going to retain it. All right.
exactly,
And if it's
exactly.
something that is boring or out of their league or just they don't comprehend it, they withdraw. And then you see behavioral problems or just, switched off altogether. Um, I was one I've had a couple of teachers in my time that understood I learned more through the conversation than I ever did the book. I can't read a manual to this day. A manual
Not
doesn't
me
make
either.
sense to me. You know, it's somebody's logic that's not mine. I am,
Mm.
show me how to do it, and I'll write down the steps. Once I've done it once or twice, that's it, I'm done. Right?
Right.
So
And
that's the,
what a strength.
yeah, and it's the, for me, the doing is the retaining. Right. But
Hmm.
when it comes down to open up your page to such and such, read this paragraph, da. Instead, I would have rather seen, read this chapter and I will come together in a group and have a discussion about it. Right.
Hmm.
Then I would have been more actually engaged and open to everybody else's different because it's intriguing. Oh, you got that from it. You got that from it. We're now engaged. And I think one of the biggest problems with society, everybody's become engaged in their phones because they're disengaged from their own life and interacting with each other. That
Hmm.
engagement skill is something we need to teach kids. And you were teaching that kid how through play to be actually engaged with something, participate in that learning, which then became a pattern skill that he could repeat over and over again in many different aspects.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what? I always say that my superpower is tricking kids into learning.
Hmm.
And that's a perfect example of like, he didn't feel like he was doing math.
Right.
He
Right.
felt like he was having fun with me. And we were both having fun.
Mm.
Right. And so um, I think the basis of my teaching is play.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter if I'm starting with a kid who's in grade 6 and their parents are kind of going, ooh, something's going on here. We need some help. We need, right. So let's get started. I still use play.
Yes.
It might look a little different, but I still use play. Like I will use a beanbag with a kid, and we'll toss that back and forth at each other while we're doing work, and
Mm.
just adding that little element.
Hmm.
Suddenly, they're not like, they're
This
like,
is a
oh,
chore.
I get to
Right.
to
Yeah.
chuck this at you. This is
Yeah,
awesome,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. And it's something
Yeah,
that a parent can repeat. Once you
yeah,
you can show, look, this is how he's learning. And like, if you want the child to be engaged, to listen and learn from you, then be interactive with the child, but build up that engagement where they want to listen, they want to learn, so make it fun. And
yeah.
it brings me back to a movie I saw many, many years ago. It was a Chinese movie, and it was called just Not One More. And it was a Chinese classroom where the kids literally put the tables together at night and slept on top of the tables.
Oh my
And one
goodness.
young man was a fast runner. So the Chinese people took him to teach him how to run for the Olympics or whatever the case is, but took him away. And the teacher had to go away because his mother was sick. So he put one of the kids in charge. And then another kid had to leave because his mother was sick and he had to go and work in the city to provide for his mother. Now, these are all around 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe 12. That's the age group. In trying to raise money to find him and bring him back, the lessons that they learned through that process, and they went and found him and they brought awareness to a news station which gave awareness to the classroom. But it was fascinating. Well, we need this amount of money to go here, and we need this for there, and we need that for there. And it became kind of that discovery of how do we get him back, and all of it was lessons learned. And I think
Hmm.
if we can give somebody like an end goal, how do we get there? When people play a game, it's the finish line. You want to get there, right? It's the next step and the next step. How do we get there? And I think if we can make that getting there intriguing, again, we're back into that engagement.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that that's also something that's sort of missing in the classroom
Mm,
setting these days too, is that the kids are, well, and not just in the classroom, to be honest. I mean,
mm,
we micromanage our children
mm.
beyond
Yes.
what is reasonable, from deciding who they're going to play with, what they're going to play, what day they're going to do it, and taking them to all their different keep
Mm.
busy activities. Now, I'm not a young person, so when I was a kid, it was go outside and play.
Yes. Yes.
And we knew every child in our
Yeah.
subdivision,
Hmm.
and we knew to be back when the lights came on,
Hmm.
and the good old days sort of thing,
Yes.
right? But there's some value in that,
Yeah.
because what we learn from playing with our peers, like valuable life lessons that are being lost, right? Like kids can't even have a disagreement on the playground anymore without adult interference. And
Oh.
I
When,
call it interference because at
yes.
some point, children, people need to learn how to work out conflict, right?
And of
At
course,
some
if he's
point.
got violent, yes, you need to stop the violence. Totally.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking
Yeah.
about kids coming up to me and saying, so and so called me a
Yeah.
dumb bum.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow, that wasn't very nice. Well, what are you going to do? I'm like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Are you going to keep playing with them? Like, it's up to you. You're the one who was called a dumb bum. What do you want to do?
Right.
Right. And so I really do believe that we have got to the point where we're robbing children of
Mm.
those opportunities to
Work things out for themselves.
work things out for themselves. And that is like what you were just talking about. It's like, well, how do I get to the end goal?
Mm.
Well, we're giving them step-by-step instructions, and it's just one way to get
Yes.
there. And there
Right.
might be a dozen ways they can get there.
Right. And I think again that invitation, this is where we need to get. What are your ideas? And,
Hmm.
a lot of the kids don't feel they have the permission to speak up because they don't want to be to piss the teacher off, or they don't want to appear stupid. They don't want to be ridiculed. And it's like, but why are we even putting that on our children? It should be laid out right from the word go. In this classroom, nothing is stupid. I
Right.
don't care what the idea is. It either has merit or it doesn't, or it's something we need to put a pin in for another time, but I want to know your ideas. And that
Hmm.
permission for children, which sometimes they don't get from the home front, is that I have a voice here. My voice is valued. I'm valued. This is something that helps build their own self-esteem through life as well.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that when a well, anybody really, but a child, when they make a mistake and the mistake is pointed out as that's a mistake or you're wrong or
Yeah,
no, then like just think about it, right? How willing are they to try
yeah,
again? Not.
exactly.
And
Mm,
so when I'm working with the kids, I mean, everybody makes mistakes, right? Especially when you're learning a new skill. So I make sure the pencil that they have doesn't have an eraser because we don't
mm.
erase mistakes because there are no mistakes.
We
All
learn
there is
from them.
good
Mm.
effort, right? It's a
Yes,
good
yes,
try.
yes,
Ah, I see why you did that. That's
right.
so clever. Here, let's give it a hug. We put a bracket around it. Let's try again. This time, I want you to think of
Yeah.
whatever, right? So there is no that's wrong. It's like, oh, good try. Let's try again. And
Encouragement.
absolutely, but it's
Yeah,
also framing it in a way
yeah.
is like I'm encouraging them to try again. And if they're reluctant, I'm like, look, do you think that if I wanted to play guitar, I could just pick it up and play? Of course not. I would have to practice it. It's a new skill. This is a new skill. You know,
Mm.
if Thomas Edison gave up, we'd still be
Be in
using
the dark.
candles,
Yeah.
right? He
Yes.
didn't do it on the first try. He
Yeah.
didn't, so it's always,
Yeah.
it's okay to make mistakes.
Mm.
But in a typical classroom environment, when a kid does that and
Mm.
makes a mistake, they get laughed at, they get told
Yeah.
they're wrong, they don't get told good job,
Right.
which that's what I think is important.
Missing. Definitely missing. Absolutely. Um, and that again goes back into the home front. Kids bring home homework and I don't get it. I don't understand it. Or maybe the parents don't understand it. Well, what's wrong with you? You stupid? Or did you not pay attention in class? Or this or that. They immediately put the kid down. Where you do this over and over and over again, where you make the kid feel small, we now have a small adult with a child trapped inside of them. And then we have dysfunction, and we have anger, and we have hate, and we have everything else that's going on out there. So the empowerment of our children of that critical thinking, that they have a voice, and that anything can be explored. Nothing is out of bounds except anything that's going to harm someone else. Knowing those type of boundaries, I think we're doing ourselves a favor in the liberation of us as a society. I mean, it all stems in our children, and that means also to their parents. I would love to see more interaction of the parents. I was a volunteer in school, so I was in there a lot, doing a lot of volunteer programs. And I know some parents are working, but how can we help the parents kind of coexist with the teachings so that they can keep that momentum going? Or how can we assist them to verbalize it in a different way And so it's not school, my teacher says this, and then they hate the parent because they're not following the same road. So it's back to the village. We've really got to get back to that village where everybody is out there looking out for those kids and everybody is a part of raising them.
Yeah, and I think that again, going back to the old days sort of thing, we had families where oftentimes the moms were homemakers
Yeah.
or they work part-time or whatever. So they were around for their children and they did take a more active role in their
Hmm.
children's schoolwork. Whereas now we have more and more families that need both parents to be working just in order to put bread on the table. And we've kind of shifted our whole thinking around that as parents is like, well, that's the school's responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I send them to school for.
All right,
The
exactly.
reality is that um, they're not getting, a lot of kids are not getting everything they need from their public education. And parents, I believe parents really do need to step up and take a more active role in their kids' education
Yes.
because um, I mean, if you saw what was going on in the average classroom these days, right? It's a really distractible environment that doesn't work for so many kids.
Mm,
Teachers have a huge spread of abilities within their group of children, and somehow they're supposed to teach one subject, the same
yeah.
subject, to kids that
One
are
size fits all. Yeah.
right. And so they can't, you know. And I'm not bashing teachers.
No,
I
they're just not
worked
taught
with,
that way.
well, not only that, but they're like there's only so much they
They
can
can
do.
do.
So they really do need the support of, you know, people like myself that can come into the classroom and help teach to those kids that are either, you know, below grade level. And I'm not a big grade fan. I
Hmm.
think grades are degrading. I actually believe that we would be far better off as a society if we had kids working at levels, right?
Mm,
So I don't care if you're 9 or you're 6, this is the level you're working at in math. That's where you're going to stay till
yeah.
you mastered it. Then we'll move you up to here. Same
Yes.
with science, same with
Yeah.
literacy. And so you'll end up with groups of kids with a wide range of age
Mm,
instead of ability. So they're all
exactly.
working at the same ability. So they feel success. The older kids can mentor the younger kids. And that way, we're not just pushing kids through and widening those big gaps, right?
Right.
So when I think, oh, if I could invent a new public school system, right? This is what it would look like. And, you know, we would have kids, the older kids would be helping the younger kids with their lunches and learning to
Exactly.
tie their shoes
Mm,
and you know teaching them how to bake and
mm,
measure and all those things, right? We would be incorporating like more life skills in
yeah.
and we used to do that even in elementary school. I remember taking cooking lessons in you know grade 5, 6, 7. Well, now you don't get that till
No.
grade 8 or 9, right? So and sewing, that's a thing of the
Mm,
past. But
right.
we
Well,
all had
music, even music now, which is an essential part for many people, music is their language, right? It
yes,
is that
yeah.
expression. And we know that music is an enormous connector and healer in the world. And yet, you're taking that away out of the program. Well, there isn't enough money. Well, stop spending it on wars. Start
Yeah,
investing in your people, and then we won't have
yeah.
so many wars, and it's like the money is being misplaced. And we've become a band-aid society where let's just band-aid it. Well, that's the symptom. Let's just do something for the symptom and when nobody looks at the root cause. And
Hmm.
that goes for our own lives as well. We have a root cause issue and we keep trying to fix it on the exterior, not the interior. And the system at the present moment needs to look right back down at the root and go, what is working, what isn't, and invite the teachers and the parents, not the administration, the teachers and the parents to have a voice and say, look, well, my kid can't learn that way because it just doesn't absorb it. And for a teacher to go back, that's the way I can teach that way. So therefore, give me those students,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Don't just give me that age bracket and that's that grade, but I'm really, really good like you are. You specialize in those differently able children. Right. So another teacher may be very, very good at that type of thing. So why are they not teaching those children instead of trying to bend and be flexible and bend herself into a pretzel to serve all of the children where her strength is this and not that?
Yeah, and you do see some teachers that are platooning like that,
Mm,
right? Where they go, you know what? I'm so good at teaching art
yeah,
and math. So let's divide, I'll take the kids, these two classrooms, I'll take these kids for that. You
yeah,
take them for,
yeah,
reading. And so we are seeing that with, teachers that are like really trying to be successful, but it's not always encouraged. And
no,
you're right, it's the administration going, well, I
yes,
don't know about that.
yes. Well, I mean, I know as a volunteer, I had one principal who, and I would do the absenteeism every morning. And then I was also the one that kind of set up the graduations, and I had tuck shop and things like that. And he decided he didn't like me and just was opposed to absolutely. In fact, he didn't like parents being actually in the school at all. And the
Mhm,
school, the school was one of those things that we raised money for the computers. We raised money for the libraries. We were there on Tuck Shop. We were there on reading to the classroom in the morning, and we were, we the field trips and things like that. Because I was lucky enough to be at a home mom. And so we were very much a part of that school system. But to have a principal that was, I don't want you here, because he had his
control.
favorite teachers, he wanted control, and he wanted everything done that way. And
Mhm,
just to start seeing teachers that used to flourish suddenly start becoming, you know, just willow away, lose their passion for teaching is so sad.
mhm. And honestly, schools don't run without parents.
No,
They don't
no,
run without
no.
parents play a big role. And there's always just like a small handful of them that really do
Mm,
all the work.
yeah,
But yeah, there's schools could not survive without the parents.
no.
So
And
that,
it's and the kids very often, if they're having a problem in the classroom or anything, they see a parent around enough, they'll go to that parent, because they feel safer to say something there than they sometimes do in their own classroom.
but you see, that's also where part of the problem is. And that's where it's when I said it's become so politicized, right?
Mm,
Um, so people in my position as education assistants or support or whatever, childcare workers, LST, they're the ones that are going to their unions and saying, well, what's a parent in that class? What are they doing in there? That's taking away one of our jobs.
mm,
But the reality is that if the parent wasn't there, they wouldn't be replaced by one
no,
of us.
no,
Like that's not the reality. That
yeah,
job needs to get filled. And if we can't fill it, then let somebody do it. For heaven's
yes,
sakes, kids need it, right?
yeah.
But but so it's this political game half the time as well. It's very disheartening because people lose sight of what is our goal? Like what is this really all about? And it's about the kids.
It is, and let's not
About the
forget that
kids.
they become
Yeah.
the future leaders.
Yeah.
If we don't
Let's
invest in them
let's
now, look what kind of leaders we have later.
let's just forget your ego. Let's
Yes,
forget the rules. Let's
yes.
forget like what do we really care about? And it should be the kids always, right?
Absolutely. And, whoever wants to be a part of it, whether it is a volunteer or, whoever it is, it's that let's be a community around those kids.
Mhm.
You have a forte, that's your strength. Certain kids congregate you for that, and other kids over there. And again, let's just drop this one size fits all. And a kid is then graded like a thing of slab of meat, grade A meat, and they're only going to get into school if they meet that grade. I couldn't do exams. Again, reading this something, I just went blank. But if you
Yeah.
if you ask me the question, I could give you the answer in a conversation, but writing it down is just for something completely blank. And even up in my adult years, I did a course of something where I went through every single platform, and they said, "Well, what we should employ her. She should be a part of this." And the administrative woman said, "No, she doesn't have the credentials. She doesn't have the piece of paper, so she's unemployable." It didn't matter
Mm.
I had the skills. I didn't have the piece of paper. And we've got so stuck on these titles and pieces of paper. And did you ever see the movie Brazil?
No.
It goes back, I think, early 80s. A great movie if you get to see it, but where you needed a requisition for a requisition for a requisition.
Right.
Right. So, and I feel in a lot of ways we're becoming that. Oh no, that's
Mhm.
not my department. You need to go to that department. And you've been on the phone for 15 hours, and or
Yeah.
it goes dead. And it's the more and more electronic we become, the more and more we're disconnected from human voice and sorting a problem out. And um, I think we're in a world of disruption right now with everything, and it's the shaking it out. And this is where the voices like yours need to come up and say, look, why we're in this shakeup, when we're
Yeah.
really beginning to look at what's not working. Let us come together to look and see what is working and how to apply it. But it
Mhm.
is really the having to step up with a really strong voice and a united people around you, saying the change has to be. There is no more option. The change has to be.
Yeah. And yeah, I spent all of last year volunteering with a group, and once a week I would host a national Zoom call, an education think tank, and I was bringing together some brilliant educators
Mm,
and parents too that were like
yeah.
recognizing like my kid is not thriving. They're miserable. They're suffering from mental health
Hmm.
issues. They're not, all these. So, anyways, and what we were doing was exploring alternative education models that are currently existing within Canada, but also around the world. And just looking at it, right? It's like, wow, look what this school is doing. And look
Yeah.
at those kids, right? And I think the key is recognizing, like what you were saying just a moment ago, like my youngest son is brilliant, but he has a written output disorder. So he
Mm-hmm.
cannot get his thoughts from here to the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was taking physics 11 and calculus 11, pretty high level math, right? And oh, actually, this was grade 12, but he had taken 11 with the same teacher. And so in grade 12, I had the student teacher meeting or whatever. And he said, it's a good thing I know Ryder, because otherwise I'd have to assume he was cheating, because I give him these tests and he just writes the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've been telling this kid since the time he was in grade 3, you got to show your work, got to show your
Yeah.
work, got to show your work. Well, he couldn't. And he finally
Right.
said to me, Mom, look, if I try and write the steps out,
Mm-hmm.
I will get the wrong answer. So I do it in my head. And like, this is like a 10-step question. He
Yes.
did it in his head, wrote the answer, and then he would go back and try
Reverse
as much as
engineer.
he could to write out the steps.
Mm.
But his teacher, was looking over his shoulder is like, wow, this kid really does know how to do it. But luckily for Ryder, he has me as a mom, and
Mm.
I made sure that they put in his IEP, his individual education plan. Look, this is his strength. I want it
Yeah.
written down. I want it documented that this is how this kid does it. And so here's his strength. Okay, I know he's got this weakness over here, but here's his strength. I want it in there. So when if he goes on to higher learning,
Yeah.
it's right there in black and white. Look, the
Right.
kid's not cheating.
And
This
there
is how.
and it's not the focusing on the weakness, but absorbing the strength. And ultimately, yes, it's nice if you can. And we see this so many with so many brilliant people. It's like and there it is. And but how did you get there? I don't know, but here it
Yeah.
is. And it's like ultimately. Isn't the here it is what we need, and we get so caught up on sometimes on, well, how did you get there? Where really it's the result that you're looking for. And then
Mhm.
somebody else probably has the other intellect. Oh, I see how you got there. You did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. I wouldn't have got there,
Right.
that way. So there again, it's the meeting of the minds. And when the meeting
Well,
of the minds, it fills in the gaps.
yeah, and I think if we start that in kindergarten, because I think
Mm,
one of the problems that I see in the classroom is that kids don't appreciate what their classmates are good at, because
right.
the kids maybe don't have the opportunity to show
Yeah.
what they're good at, right? So that little boy in kindergarten who can build that amazing tower with the blocks that
Hmm.
nobody, how do you, why aren't we exploiting that, right? Like, why
Yes.
aren't we saying, oh my goodness, you are going to be an architect one
Yeah,
day.
architectural mind.
Yeah, could
Yes,
you
yes,
build me this?
yes,
And
yeah.
then show it off, right? So
Encourage,
that
encourage.
kids, yeah. So the other kids are like, well, he maybe isn't really good at reading, but did you see what he built?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, right? So then we're actually recognizing everybody's gifts, because not everybody's going to be good at math. Not everybody's going to be
no,
good at reading. Not everybody's going to be good at drawing, but we're all good at something. So what can we do to not just, just during playtime, but to really show off to everybody what your magnificence, your brilliance, your superpower is. And we
yeah.
can do it. We just
Yes.
don't.
No, no. But I think it's just something that people haven't thought about. And it's like, oh, even now, with people listening to this, a parent, a teacher, and it's like, you're right. Instead of like, George, why aren't you like Stephen? Why can't you do it like that? Instead of like, George, this is really your strength. Stephen, that's really your strength. Perhaps you can help each other with the weaknesses, but let's look at the
Mm-hmm.
strengths that you have. I have a almost 2-year-old grandson, and I go and look after him a lot. And he has his series of cars, and he takes them, drives them along here, parks them there, then he takes them up here, takes them down there. And if you move one of those cars, he goes ballistic. In
Right.
his mind, he is doing something. He's
Right.
creating something. He's on a journey. You come along and interrupt that journey, he doesn't like it at all. And I noticed that, he loves, I bought him a garage where the little cars can go down, and it's just they've just bought him a ramp, which they just sent a picture of, and I'm going down to look after him tomorrow. And it's like, this is going to be grandma's, you know, um, anxiety, because now it's a ramp on top of these brackets, and he's got his pushy car on top of it, and it's like, like, you know. But if for him, it's like, what else can I do? What else can I do? And I think if we stop and watch our children in their discovery of what else they can do, now they don't know where those boundaries are. We can, whoops, careful, or be mindful. Look out for this. Oh, no, no, you can't do that. That's dangerous. If we show
Mhm,
them those boundaries, but don't stop them from doing it, don't stop them from exploring. And we
mhm,
talked earlier about children with different challenges, differently abled, as I like to call them. I've interviewed many an autistic mum or a child. Oh, that's maybe an adult now that is autistic. And what I've discovered is that they're generally extremely focused and gifted with what they can do, but they're
mhm,
extremely selective of who they have around them. And in a lot of ways, that's there to teach us. It's not about how many people are around us, how many people follow us, how many likes they have. It's about your tribe and how you support each other. And I
mhm,
think that there's a lot to be learned from them instead of they're defective. No, they're not. They're just differently abled.
mhm. Yeah, I have a lot of experience working with children with autism, and I still work with many of them, like outside of the school system
Mhm.
as well. But I had this one little fellow. He came to us in kindergarten, and I was told by my IST that he was nonverbal,
Mhm.
that he was going to bolt, that he was violent, that he was, they painted this
Yeah.
picture and
Of a
said, and there you
horrific
go,
child.
Jay, it's all
Yes.
yours.
Yeah.
It's all yours. Good luck with that. And I love a challenge, so it was all good. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't believe what I'm told.
Mhm.
I'm gonna just observe. So that child was not nonverbal. He was choosing not to speak. He had no reason to. Why would
Yeah.
he?
Right.
So I had to find ways to provide incentive for him to want to speak.
Hmm.
It's like that was my job to do. It's like
Yes.
it's not his job to speak. It's my job to figure out what he wants to talk about.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And he could be violent. So it was my job to figure out, well, instead of, he when he got upset, he would bang his head. It's
Hmm.
like, well, that's not safe, but I can't just tell him to stop.
Right.
It's serving a purpose. So I need to replace it with a behavior that's
Yes.
safer.
Yeah.
So it was a gradual transition from hitting his head to bouncing. But
Hmm.
even that, I thought, okay, well, that's better, but it's still hurting his tailbone. So what's the next transition? Okay, so now we're going to transition from bouncing to a beanbag chair and rocking, right? Nobody's getting hurt, and he is getting the opportunity to self-regulate.
Right.
But now if I'd have just went in and just said, okay, that's it, I'm in charge, and there'll be no
Yeah.
more of that. Well, all that would have done is increase the behavior, right? Like,
And have him retreat even more too. So yes.
right.
Yeah.
And then I also discovered that I mean, he's brilliant. He is brilliant. He loves trains. And he can tell you about every train that's been built in North America,
Yeah.
when it was built, what, like, just
Yeah.
so many
As
details.
I said, that focus in,
Oh
right?
my
Yeah.
goodness, honestly, brilliant. And reads, like reading at a grade 10 level, but nobody knew it,
Right.
right? And so it was my job to discover this stuff. But I also was like, okay, he loves trains, he loves trains, he loves trains. How can I use that? I need to be able to use that information to help him in other areas. So he has a 9-letter name, poor kid, right? And so I'm like, oh gosh, I got to teach him how to spell his name. All right. Well, I would put it on popsicle sticks, his, Alex, spell Alexander. And then I would use math blocks, and then rocks. And then I had all these different things around a table, and he had to put them in order, which is sequencing, right? And so I just slowly taught him how to spell it. And then when I wanted him to write, I had made a train cards with his letters and laminated them. So he put those in order, but eventually I got him to pick up the pen and trace over top. And that's how we started the printing process. But it was me going, how can I incentivize this kid? I have to figure out what his currency is so that I can use it to help him learn, right?
Which means you had to give him the respect of time, of listening to him to know how you can help him.
Yes.
Right. I mean, the autistic mums that, mums with autistic children that I interviewed, they were told just to institutionalize their children and go and have another. And it's like,
Right.
you're just going to, my own daughter is pregnant with a second child, and we found out that he has Down syndrome. And we don't know the degree of what that is going to be until he's born, until we see, what his challenges are. She's already learned sign language. She's teaching all of us to use sign language. So if he has difficulty with speaking, that we use other gestures and other ways of communicating. And the thing is, I think one of the big things that we've got to get completely out of our vocabulary is that these children are defective. They're not. They're differently abled, and I know that this child is coming into our world to teach us something. And it's what can we learn from our children? Yes, we're their custodians, we're their guides, we're their teachers, but if we're not willing to learn something from them, then we're missing that point. Because it's also, what are they here to teach us? And there are so many. Again, I haven't interviewed I've interviewed a father of Down syndrome. I haven't interviewed anybody there yet, but with many autistic people, I've been so surprised. But at the same time, the common theme is very focused, very brilliant in what they do. Just the socialization and the interaction is choosy. I'll speak with somebody that I find interesting in. I'll interact with something I have an interest in. Other than that, I'm not going to. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that, because how many people do we interact with thinking that we should? And
Yeah.
and really, why?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I also think that something that's important as we look towards the future of education is having that circular or triangular idea of, we do all learn from each other.
Yeah.
So parents, teachers, students, like we
Yes.
should all be working and learning from each other, because
Yeah.
you're right, there's so much to learn from our children. And if you go into it with this idea that no, they learn from me, that's my job,
Right.
then you're going to be sadly missing out on some amazing things.
Amazing things. I mean, my kids used to put plays together and, just bang together and come up with all of these lovely performances and or drawings or things like that. And it's just like, one of the things, as you said earlier, we put them in this program, that program, that program. Where do we give them time to just be, just play?
Yeah.
Time with just themselves, that lovely, beautiful gift of solitude, the time to play with each other. Or play as a family. And, no, they're in this program on Monday, this program on Tuesday, this program on Wednesday. When did they have time to just be a child doing nothing and everything they want to do?
And then they come home and you hand them their iPad.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, again, when do we have self-awareness?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
when we're quiet, right? And
Yes.
that could look like coloring,
Mm,
drawing, reading, playing with stuffies or Barbies or
yeah.
whatever. But we don't actually see a lot of that with
No.
kids, maybe when they're toddlers, but as they get older, it's very common for kids just to be handed whatever electronic, and all that does is distract your brain, your mind,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it squashes your creativity. So
Yeah.
I actually really believe that iPad time, particularly for children who are autistic,
Hmm.
should be very limited.
I agree. The other thing is that it's been proven that you give a child too early and for too long, it's brainwashing. They don't learn to think or feel for
Hmm.
themselves, right? And it is a form of brainwashing. So, a lot of people think it's easy. We used to get criticized for putting on the video and letting our kids watch a movie, right? But once the movie
I'm
was
guilty.
over, the kids were anxious to go out and play. But
Yeah.
something about the iTablet, your computer is or the phone even, they get so lost in it, it becomes intoxicating and it's like they can't get out of it.
Yeah, and I myself, I'm like a Wordle, Quirtle, Wordscape nerd, right? I love anything to do with language. And I actually have to monitor myself because
Yes.
if I start playing Wordscape or something, I'm like, oh my gosh, a whole 40 minutes just went
Yeah.
by. Now,
Yeah.
if I struggle with that as an adult, that's a big responsibility to put on a child to self-monitor. But you're
Exactly.
right, it's not the same
Limit the
as
time.
watching a movie.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
we
used to
can't get
say,
away from computers and those electronics are going to be a part of their life, but they need to understand it's a tool in their life. It's not a substitute for their life.
yeah, and I think that there are dangers that come with it as well. And I'm dealing with a young man that I support, and I've worked with him for 6 years, but now he's 14. So he's like at that age where they're
Mm,
trying to give him independence, which they should, but he's on his iPad constantly.
yeah.
And even with putting filters on there, when he searches,
Mm,
things come up that are completely inappropriate
right.
and I think harmful to
Yeah.
a developing mind, especially, they're just a little more susceptible to
Yes.
being taken advantage of. And I really think it's a problem. And I also see that they tend to stim on things, right? So they love this show, they love it. And so they'll watch like a 10-15 second piece of it over and over and over
Yeah.
and over and over and over and over. And then they script, right? You hear them talking. And I always say, who are you talking to?
Mm,
What
yeah.
do you mean? I'm like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. So, and I'm the only one here. So who are you talking to? So I think that that's also a bit damaging.
Yeah.
It's taking away their ability
Their own
to,
voice.
well, yeah, to separate
Yeah.
what's going on in the real world versus this imaginary world that they can just get really sucked into. And if that's where they're at, then they're not really practicing any of the other,
Yeah.
life skill type stuff, right?
Right, exactly. There was on the news last week a 6-year-old going into the school and shooting her teacher. Now, where did a 6-year-old feel it was okay to do that? The mother having the gun near for a start. It is like what was in the mentality of this child that her teacher maybe had graded or did something that she would go in the middle of class to shoot her teacher. And it's like, wait, don't put the blame on the child. This is what's been going on around the child that this child feels it's okay. And then we had in Toronto a bunch of kids that met online and they came together, 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and stabbed someone to death.
I
And it's
know, I
like,
heard that.
what is going on with our children? Why are they so disconnected right now? And we can blame COVID, we can blame this, we can blame that, but I think it does go back to the core. The education has let them down. The family environment maybe has let them down because people are too busy trying to make money that they're not raising their children. The village has let them down. And
Yep.
they're feeling so disconnected from themselves that they're just looking for something to attach to. And when something is sensationalized or they get together and they start sensationalizing something, it becomes the reason and rational reason for them, even though it's irrational.
Yeah, we're seeing quite a lot of that
Yeah.
with the the kind of like the social justice type
Mhm.
stuff that's out there. And, something that I feel quite strongly about is the way that this opens up a whole another can of worms, but like the whole transgender type stuff. And
Yes.
I don't have a discriminatory bone in my body. You
Mm.
do you. I really do feel that way. Do whatever. But
Yes.
I think that we need to leave our children alone, because they're putting it to them at an age where they shouldn't even be thinking about any of that stuff. Like, it shouldn't even
Mhm.
be coming across their radar yet. They should
Yeah.
just be playing,
If it's
right? They should,
something that's in their family or in their vicinity, then yes, talk about it,
but the
right?
family talks about it.
Yeah, the family talks about it. If you're in, somebody and the kid knows somebody, yes, talk about it. But, pushing it on the public, arena before they're registering, understanding what it all means, because really it's that person has found their own individuality, their own voice, and this is what it means. That's great. But we don't want to confuse the children that's if you lose your voice, that's the way to go. We need to show them many avenues. So yeah, we were a lot of that. And of course, we talked about before the shows, the vaccine, whether to vaccine or not. And you're saying that, yes, there's been some proof that, autism could come about from vaccines. And then, of course, we see, the other side of the coin is that vaccines have prevented many diseases that used to be, things that wiped out. And, the thing is, a lot more research needs to be done. Maybe it's not so much the principle behind the vaccine, but the amount of stuff they put in one vaccine. Do you
Yes.
need the 6, 7, or whatever is in the one vaccine? Um,
Yeah.
and if, what is really necessary and what is kind of more big pharma cashing in. So,
Yeah. I think there's a lot of big pharma cashing in.
yeah.
And
But
I
the
can
trap,
tell you,
hmm
sorry,
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, from my personal experience from starting at the school system 20 years ago, and I worked at a small school, and I was there for a big chunk of my career. When I first started there, in the entire student body of like 256 kids or whatever it was, we had one child with autism.
Hmm.
When I left 2 years ago, we had three coming into kindergarten every year,
Yeah.
at least three,
Hmm.
sometimes more. So something's going on.
Yeah.
It's not that our student body didn't change much. There's
Hmm.
maybe 50 more kids. That's it. That's a huge increase. And I don't understand why we're not asking questions. It's like, wow, what's causing this, right? There's something going on.
I think what the truth is that because when you get people that are up in arms and all they want to do is fight, and people tune out.
Mhm.
Along with maybe, the vaccines don't need to have all that type of stuff in, and there's some stuff in there we just simply don't need to have in that vaccine at all. The body doesn't need to have, it's being pushed on us. But the other thing we've also got to look at is that we know that the electronics that we have all around us, smart houses, smartphones, smart this, smart that, is
Yeah.
changing the chemistry of the body as well, and
Yeah. The
changing
EMF.
the brain waves and everything else. And I think it's like we're not going to get rid of technology. It's here to stay. But I think what we have to do is like, do we need to bombard the body with X, Y, and Z? And it's time to review. It's not, please put your damn pitchforks down. There is
Right.
no resolution that's going to happen when you're up in arms and shouting and screaming or conspiracy theorying. It is about, this is an issue that we're looking at. What merit does it have? What can we do about it? It's not about who's accountable. No, it's another system that's being put out there. What are its merits? What are not its merits? What needs to change within it? And until we can get to a stage as adults where we can actually bring to the table collectively, this is my research, this is my opinion, this is your research. Let's look at the collective research here. What is
Right.
something that's a common denominator? What else could it be? What else, or the combinations of things, and how are we going to rectify it? But when you've
Mhm.
got people just wanting to mudsling and condemn and persecute and scream and yell at, all the people are going to do is shut down and listen to nothing.
Yeah, well, and I think also we live in a cancel culture as well,
Mhm.
right? Where dissenting or different opinions are not tolerated either.
Right.
And then what you get is you get persecuted as a conspiracy
Yeah.
theorist instead of a concerned citizen who's
Yes.
asking questions, who's raising
Right.
questions,
Yeah.
right? And I really think life is always a journey of learning. We should always be asking questions, right? We
Right.
should
And
always be
nothing,
exploring.
is absolutely perfect. Well, again, the one size fits all, is,
Yeah.
the vaccines may be good in certain areas or certain amounts, and other physicalities or whatever not. I mean, the thing is it's the blanket approach,
Right.
right? And it's like
Yeah, that never works.
it never does work. And whether the administrative concerns like it or not, we have four key personality traits. We may all have blood, heart, this, that, etc., all poop and pee and do the whole thing, but our chemistry of our perspective of how we see life, how we interact with life, how we learn, it's all different. And if we could just look at the beautiful different colors of life instead of looking at it as something evil because it's not the same. And let's face it, political, religion, and academics has been, I want you to fit in this box and do as you're told, right?
Mhm.
That box right now is just being exploded. And everybody's coming out of that box. But what we now have is a hodgepodge of confusion. Everybody
Mhm.
trying to have their voice or trying to express themselves or trying to go the other way, and it's the extreme. We need to kind of calm down with rational heads, with real facts and science and data behind us, and sit at the table and look at what is the whole problem. Leave your ego at the door, leave your financial backing at the door,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And come together for the common good. Can we get there? I know there's many people like yourself that want to, and I think it's more of you wanting to have your voice, other people wanting to have their voice, and coming together in respect of each other and to hear one another and then look at, you've got a point. What can we do about it? What needs to be extracted? What else do we need to do? Because until we're willing to do that, which quite honestly, 5 years ago, the universe gave me a saying, the universe is going to shake us up to wake us up, for us to step up
Mhm.
and change it up, but also to grow up vibrationally into a higher consciousness, but grow up.
Well, and this is kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier too, is like that those skills required to do all those things you just said
Yeah.
are sadly missing now,
Yes.
right? So if we're struggling in our
Yeah.
generation
Yeah.
because of our egos and our, I need to be right, what's going to happen 20 years from now with these other kids,
Right.
these children that
Division,
haven't?
division, division. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And what happens when you have division? It goes to war, or it goes to territorial, or it goes to constant attack. It is not unison.
No.
The whole conscious awakening right now, which is very painful for certain people because they're waking up to actually recognizing the pain that we inflict on each other as human beings. The animal
Mhm.
kingdom doesn't do it to us. Nature does in a way because she's saying, grow up or I evict you, right? But
Yeah.
it is that all the things wrong in the world are coming from human choices. But we have the capability of putting things right. If only we could come together and listen to the chorus of voices and give each person a turn to have their own solo.
Hmm. And to use whatever their gifts are.
Exactly. The more we can do that as adults, the more we're giving our children permission to be that way. But if they
Yeah.
look at our adults right now and say, you can only have a voice if you've got the pitchfork in your hand, you can only have the voice if you're angry and this one's right and that one's right. What are we teaching our children?
Mm. Yeah, good point.
Discord, 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 division, division, hate versus love. That's not what it's meant to be about.
No, no. Yeah, I'm hopeful for the next generation.
Hmm.
Like I actually am. I think there's a big movement right now,
Yes, there
even in
is.
education. I actually coined it like an education revolution, right? I think
Good.
there's enough parents that are and educators that are kind of going, huh, you know what? Something isn't working
Yeah.
here. enough people that are looking at it that I think we're gonna see some change over the next 10 years. And I don't know who's going to be responsible for it, if it's going to be like parents stepping in. I hope so, and
Mm,
that's why I developed my program too, is so that parents can do this. You
yes.
don't need to have a degree to be a
Right.
teacher. You
Right.
don't need to have all this experience. Here, I laid it all out for you. I gave you a video. I showed you exactly how to do it. You can do this, right?
Mm,
I kind of think that parents need to and will start taking on a bigger role when it comes to the education of their kids. And I'm hoping that teachers are going to start recognizing that, I've got 24 kids and 15 of them can't read, or
right.
15 can't do math,
Yeah.
and I've got 15 of them that have mental health issues.
Mm,
How come such a big increase in
right.
mental health issues over
Yeah.
the last 10 years? So I actually think that the awareness is developing and we're going to see some change. That's my
Yeah.
positive, hopeful
We need
outlook.
interaction. We need conversation. We need courteous conversation. And we need more, instead of abstaining from, but more participation of interaction. And my daughter and son-in-law are millennials, and they both put the baby to bed. They both do the diapers. They've been reading to him since he was born. And, they play with him. They're all about letting him discover what else he
Mhm.
can do, what else he can do. But they are both interactive parents. And when, I have my kids, it is, dad was the toy machine when he came home and
Mhm.
played with them, or the discipline, which the discipline came from me. And basically that was it. Right. So we're seeing so much more, and have a show before this, which is it's called the Hero Tribe, bringing out the hero in every one of us. And these are millennials. These are millennials that each had different careers, from science to hotel management to martial arts, and how in their journey they came together realizing that there is a hero in each and every one of us. And we are asking those heroes to come out, don't have to wear the cape. You see, you've got a gift inside of you. And we
Mhm.
want that gift to come out because it's part of the ingredient that strengthens the tribe, the village, the community, and us as a society. But we've
Yeah.
got to be willing to do the work. And that means if we teach our children the skills right from the word go of how to have that critical thinking, how to have that wonderment, how does it work? Why does it work? How can I use it? And that willingness to explore and willingness to ask questions and willingness to be a part of a team in a conversation or a debate or in a building or something, look at the skills that they're going to bring forward with them.
Yeah, exactly. It's about, like, right now, the system is a comparative one, a
Yes,
competitive one. And what we need
to
is a
detriment.
contributionism, right? How can you
Yes,
contribute? How do you
yes,
contribute? How do you
yes,
contribute? How do you contribute? How do
yes,
you contribute? And
yes.
I was one of the guest speakers I had on my think tank was a fellow named John Moore down in California, and he is dyslexic, but he's an amazing artist.
Hmm.
And he was saying to me, I'll take that if I'm taking kids out into nature, because he draws what's out in nature. What do we see? He
Right.
goes, I love taking the kids with
Yes.
ADHD. They see
I
everything.
know. I
They
know.
see everything. Whereas,
Absolutely.
this other kid's also great to have because they're very introspective. So they
Yeah.
see the details.
Yeah.
And so I thought, yeah, like, what a great way to
Mm.
explain it is that we can all contribute with whatever our gifts are, and we all have them. And I'm currently actually taking a program right now. It's called the Kindergarten Masterclass, but that is the premise of it, is through storytelling and through characters,
Mm.
imaginary characters, we are teaching the kids all about virtues. That's also a thing that's in the past. We don't talk about virtues in
Hmm.
classrooms anymore. And we are also teaching every child, we start with I am
Yeah.
statements. I
Yeah.
am love, I am joy, I am peace, I am grateful, I am an author of my own life, I am,
Yes.
right? And we encourage them to find where they sparkle.
Mm.
And that's from kids in like 4 years old and up. And I think that that's where it needs to start, is in those really young ages.
Yes.
And it has to be about, we all contribute to get to where we want to go. We need everybody.
And
right?
if they learn that, and the two words I hate are comparison and competition when it comes to humanity. Leave that competition up to a game. Life is not that kind of game. And to
Mhm.
compare yourself to someone else, no, because then you're always going to be living up to somebody else's expectation and not your own beautiful gift. My analogy I always use is that we're here in discovery of what our beautiful instrument is. We learn how
Mhm.
to play it. And then we look for that orchestra that we can each individually bring our instrumental strength to, but play in harmony with each other so that it
Exactly.
can resonate out to others. And that
And best
it's
served. Yeah,
that's where you don't have the competition. You've got to have the collaboration.
totally. Yeah, I agree. So again, I think we're heading in that direction, right?
Yes,
Here we are, we're training more and more teachers around North America that, hey, this is a really good program. This is the way to go,
yeah.
right? So,
And that's the thing, duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. If it's working, use it.
yeah,
And if
right.
something comes out of that that's even more creative, then duplicate that, share, share, share. If you as a teacher, if you're as a parent, I have found this works. Don't
Yeah,
hold it to yourself, share it. It may
yeah.
not be for everybody, but there's that one person, teacher, parent, who's going, really? God, that worked for me, right?
Hmm.
And that worked for my child. But we've got to be interactive parents, which means we've got to be interactive of the school system as well. And we've got to have a voice in that school system. And that means we've got to attend those meetings. That means we've got to hold the school boards accountable. And we've got to say, no, these are the statistics. It's not working. You're letting my child down. Stop,
Hmm.
stop running everything from the administrative point of view and start looking at investing in the children. Because if we don't, you are investing medically in healthcare later on with people with depression, with people with illnesses,
Anxiety.
dis-ease, anxieties, and everything else, or you're investing in the prison system because they turn to violence. Which money do you want to invest in? If you invest in the children now, it's less investment in the wrong areas later.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree.
So you're working with children, obviously, that have those differently abled challenges. So if a parent is listening right now and they have a child like that, that, is like, I just don't know how to teach them or I don't know what to do, they can reach out to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always encourage parents to reach out to me and to tell me what challenges they're facing right now. What's your biggest challenge right now? And
Mm,
and if I can, I help, or I direct them to someone who I think could help them. If they're looking at literacy and they're worried that their child isn't reading or spelling, first of all, I'll tell you right now, spelling is not getting taught in school
right.
at all. And if you have an intermediate teacher who says, yeah, we do spelling, it's because the parents want them to. So they're using programs that are completely ineffective. The kids memorize their 20 words, they write the test, and then they promptly forget those 20 words. So,
Right.
um, what I have found over the last 17 years of supporting kids reading and spelling and printing, I've developed my own program that's a little bit different. It's based on Orton Gillingham, which is a science-based program that was developed back, I think, in the 30s
Mm-hmm.
for kids that have learning challenges like dyslexia and
Mm-hmm.
processing and all that ADHD, that kind of thing. But I've taken that training and that methodology and combined it with the experience that I've had in and out of the classroom and developed my own program that combines reading, spelling, and printing all in one lesson. Because
Mm,
each one of those components right now get taught separately, but they
yeah.
should be taught together because each one supports and reinforces the others, right?
Yeah.
So I also, because as I said earlier, the premise of my practice is based on play. I don't care
Mm,
how old you are. If you're smiling and happy, you're open to learning.
yes.
So how do we get them there? What's going to make this kid happy? And I have the silliest things that I use when I'm teaching children because I don't care if I look silly.
No,
I
no,
want them to have fun.
no. And
And
actually, it's permission to be silly. It's fun to be silly.
exactly, exactly. We should all be silly. I always
Yes.
say to the teachers that I'm training, I'm like, it's not fair if just the kids are having fun.
Exactly.
Right? We should be having fun too. If they're laughing and smiling and engaged, it's because we're doing our job, and we should be laughing and smiling and engaged too, because learning and teaching should be joyous.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, when my kids used to fight, I'd made them hug each other, and then we, no, you got to kiss each other, and they forget about they're fighting about. And if they weren't listening to me, I started singing opera, and they'd do anything to shut me up. So, but, try to make it fun as much as possible. And as a parent, we're going to, based on the information of growing up, of what we know, of what's available, and looking back, yeah, there's a lot of things I did wrong.
mm,
And that you can't beat yourself up for it because it's what you knew at the time. But if you do have grandchildren now, then you know how
mhm.
to approach it differently. And that's the willing to evolve, the willing to grow. Just because it has been doesn't mean it should still be, right?
Exactly.
If it's the system is broken, it's broken. It's not about sitting 8 hours at a desk. Some kids can thrive on it. It's not good for them physically anyway, right? There's a wonderful, I've seen this on a couple of videos. Of one of the math teachers, he does a dance, and the kids do the math while they're dancing, and another teacher
Mhm.
doing something else. And one of my kids had a teacher, Mr. Staten. He had a bathtub in his room, and he had a loft, and he had these uh I can't remember what they're called, but you could, if you kind of read the certain time, you could gather them up and eventually trade them in for a treat, right? Or you
Oh,
could
okay.
go, you finished your work, you can go read in the bathtub or read up in the loft. And I remember going to them and saying, well, my son has learned, he said he has selective abilities. Like if he's really interested, he is immersed. If he's not
Yeah,
interested, he's out to lunch, right?
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that is kind of very common with our kids. How do we keep them engaged? How do we keep
Well,
them
I've
engaged?
got a million tricks.
Right.
That
And
is
that,
my specialty.
right. And you're also offering something. There's a free course pack reading spelling and printing, right? All of those words put together. Sorry, see, there's my dyslexia. It wasn't in one line, so I had to put it together. But you're offering that free, so people can get hold of that. And of course, your
Yeah.
site is timetoshineteaching.com.
Yes. And
So,
so that latter pack is, so I have a level one's phonics. It's for the whole alphabet and some of the digraphs that I'm creating as I'm going along. That's the first letter pack. It's the first 5 letters, but it's not the first 5 letters of the alphabet.
right,
It's the first 5 letters that I teach, because as soon as you teach 2 letters, kids can read and spell.
right.
And so I've got a school in Summerland right now that's using my program with kindergartners, and they were all reading by Christmas.
Mm,
And the teacher is just like, I can't believe how easy this is.
mm,
It's all there. I watch your video, you show me how to do it. The next day I go in, I feel confident. And the kids love it there because it's playful,
yes.
right? Lots of fun. There's lots of movement involved. And we're training them how to hear the sound. So when you read, you see the symbol, you say the sound. When
Mm,
you're spelling, you hear the sound and you have to identify the symbol that makes
mm.
that sound. And that is really missing in schools, right? So that's
Identification.
why these kids are so successful, is because they're getting all of it, and they're learning to print the letters as well. So when it comes time to start with the writing, they're prepared.
And kids are sponges when they're young. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh,
it they just absorb so much. And
mhm.
we think, oh no, oversaturating, overloading. And it's like, yeah, that we do have to pull the plug on them sometimes with their energy and calm them down or this and that. But they're capable of learning so much. And,
Mhm.
especially up to a certain age, and then it starts slowing down. So, give them as much foundational stuff they need. And
Yes.
then they'll take those same practices and same principles into everything else that they do.
Right. And one of the things I'm encouraging the teacher to do is like, okay, say we're going to teach them short vowel O. Well, before we even start, the key word is octopus. So,
Mm.
hey, let's learn everything we can about octopuses, right?
Right.
And then let's do some counting of their legs and label. Now we're
Mm.
covering math. And now let's read a fiction book. And now let's do an art project. And now, so before they even see the letter, they've
Yes.
learned everything there is to know about octopuses. They've had so much fun. They've waved, they went and
Mm,
played octopus tag in gym. They've done all the, they're so connected to octopus that when you introduce the letter, they're like, hey, I know, hey,
yeah.
right? And so then they're excited about it
Yeah.
too. Yeah, and you've
Identification,
yeah,
right?
so you've connected to their life
Mm,
experiences, you've taught them new things, and they've had a lot of fun learning it. And by the time you introduce the letter, they're excited to learn more about it, right? So
yeah.
I really think that um, when you're teaching literacy, it doesn't just have to be about the letters. You can incorporate math, art,
Yes.
gym, all of it, science, everything in there. And now they're completely absorbed and engaged.
Yeah. I love getting my little one books. And one of the ones I gave for Christmas was all the big fishes and a story about each one of them, and what they're called and everything. And then also some books from people that I've interviewed because, they're parents and they've then written these stories kind of stimulated by their kids or what they see is missing. And the thing is through storytelling, by reading to a kid, and then even having a kid then tell them their story. It is showing them all the different ways of living or looking at something and the importance of a story, the importance of their story
Their
and why
story.
it's so important in life. And so respect the other stories so that you can understand your own story. And if we actually invested in our children in this way to really flourish and excel in all that they are and all their beautiful giftedness, imagine the creativity in a society we would have in our future.
I spend a fair bit of time doing exactly that,
Yeah.
imagining
y-
what is possible, and
Yes.
then working with a team of people to try and make it happen. So
Yes.
it's a pretty great thing.
Yes, exactly.
I'm very fortunate.
Well, you found your right instrument,
My
right?
why and my way,
You're
right?
winding your way, and you also created the orchestra to come and join.
Hmm.
So it's you've kind of become the conductor as well as the player, and that's the importance. The conductor is nothing without the orchestra. The orchestra is nothing without the instrumentalists. They're nothing
Exactly.
without the music to play. It takes all of us
Hmm.
collaborating together to really create something worth listening to. So
I agree.
really important. So
Hmm.
again, they can go to timetoshineteaching.com/free course pack reading, spelling, printing to get what you've just talked about. Then go to your site, timetoshineteaching.com. They can reach you at Norma Jean at timetoshineteaching.com, Facebook, Norma Maxwell 90, and Instagram, Norma Jean Maxwell, and LinkedIn, Norma Jean Maxwell. And also you have a YouTube channel as well. And so they can get all of this right here. You just have to put in your name, Norma Jean Maxwell, and everything is there. But it's this is something that there's book clubs, and I think there should be podcast clubs where people listen to something and then each one afterwards kind of shares what they got out of it. And I think again, if we could converse about what we're listening to, what we're learning, and be open to each other's different perspective, we would see the bigger picture and thus enable ourselves to create the change that is needed.
Yes, I agree. And if I could just also mention, Sarah, that I do Facebook Lives every Thursday where I take a topic that a parent or a teacher has sent me in one of their challenges. This is what I'm
Mm.
dealing with. What should I do? And I post those on my Time to Shine teaching YouTube channel so people can always get those. And if they sign up for my newsletter, then I send those out at the end of the month as well. So anything they've missed, and they also see what's coming up for the upcoming month. And right now, I've got a webinar that I'm doing
Mm.
this Thursday and the following Monday that is sharing my top 5, um, teaching tips and tools that is good for both parents and for educators, particularly those younger kids, but older kids as well. Just sharing some of my information. It's free. And
Now, this is going to actually show after that, so because your show's only coming out next week. So will they be able to have access to the webinar after it's happened?
yeah. And so all they have to do is just join my newsletter list, and they can do that from my website.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether your children has, some difficulties in life or autism, it doesn't matter what it is. A lot of children have difficulty in learning, and just because not the one size fits all, and it's, doesn't mean there's something wrong with your child. There's something wrong with the system, and and the only way we're going to change that system is as parents being the chorus and singing loud enough that not only are we talking to the local administration, then we're talking to the school boards, and then we're talking to the provincial, and then or state, and we're talking to the higher. We've got to go all the way up that food chain, and it's only, not again in angst. We don't want the angst. The angst turns people off. We want people in the light to share. This is what we can do. Empower us. Empower us to make these changes that invest in our children's future in a far more honoring and productive way.
Agreed. And well said. Thank you.
We are very much living in a dysfunctional society today, and we can just look back to our education and just society as a whole on many aspects. And we need to not be afraid to look at what's not working and how do we put it right. And we've got to realize as individuals, we have the power to change things in our own lives. And therefore, that brings about the changes that are needed in everybody else's lives. So please be willing to listen, to learn, and apply.
Great. I agree.
Thanks so much for being with us here today and sharing and doing everything that you do. It's very, very important. I don't want to see any child thrown away. No child thrown away. We need to empower them because they are the gifts to us. They are the future. And the more we invest in them today, the better our future is going to be for everyone.
It's the only way.
The only way. The only way.
The only way.
Yeah. And always let love run. No, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sarah. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed our chat today.
Me too. And remember, folks, love should be the core of everything. When you do something from love, when you invest with love, when you do things lovingly, you are more invitational. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations, or follow us on Patreon and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment.